Railway Conversations with Doc Frank. This is Steve Allday.
Hi, it's Doc Frank, and welcome to another episode of Railway Conversations. I have Steve Allday back in today's episode. I had a big success with him previously in episode number 16. If you've missed that, then it's definitely recommended to get back to that after, of course, you listen to today's episodes. We talked about a number of interesting things, including the professionalism of railway, keeping promises and commitments, risk aversion versus risk awareness, the importance of risk management for the project budgeting and scheduling, Sydney Metro Southwest, and a number of other things. As usual, Steve does not disappoint and gives a lot of interesting insights and wisdom. So please enjoy. And before we start, I want to tell you about a very special offer that I have for my very first participation in Black Friday and Cyber Monday. The arguably best CBTC conference of all times, the CBTC World Summit. That's, by the way, not me saying that. That's what all the speakers and all the attendees of the conference said, is still available for watching on demand. That means that you can see all the 18 presentations from 13 international speakers on top-notch inside of CBTC for metros. You can watch it whenever you like, from wherever you like, no time zone problems, doesn't matter where you are, and you can watch it as often as you like. The special for Black Friday is that you get an additional training course completely for free. It's a course that normally sells at $500. It's called High Capacity Signaling, and it does include CBTC, how it achieves high capacity, and also how CBTC needs to be applied in order to achieve high capacity signaling. It's a very nice complementation of the CBTC World Summit conference, and it's definitely recommendable to check it out. This offer closes on Cyber Monday on the 27th of November, so please don't think about too long. At the end of this episode, I will tell you about a second offer for Black Friday and Cyber Monday, but before that, please enjoy my conversation with Steve Allday. Okay, Steve, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Frank. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, thank you very much for making the time at relatively short notice. You are not even in Australia at the moment. You are in Malaysia. I have no idea whether you can talk about what you're doing there. But if you can, maybe you just share a little bit about what you're doing there.
So I'm in Malaysia at the moment, en route from the UK. I've been to the UK for a while, and it's on business, and it's looking for talking to some clients, and obviously looking to see if there's some work out there for TSA in the company that I'm working for.
Okay, so good old business development. Yeah, that's always good. Yeah.
It is, and I always say I'm not very good at business development, but some people seem to think I am for some reason.
Well, if you were not good at business development, then probably a number of your recent managers have made mistakes in putting you into positions like this, I'd say.
True. Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, if you consider, started up businesses for Balfour and also Siemens from some zero, so I guess it must have some DNA.
Yes. So, but Malaysia wasn't the main thing. I wanted to start this conversation really to compliment you for making the time when I really need you to make the time. I'm notoriously short of interview partners, and that's actually part of an observation that I made over the last few months, basically throughout the entire year. If I start looking back at 2023, which is now in November, coming towards the end, what I noticed, and I'm not sure whether just the people that I'm dealing with or whether that's more a general thing, is a tendency of breaking promises. like telling people, yeah, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, yeah, we're doing a podcast interview or speaking at your conference and all kinds of stuff, and then things just evaporate. Like we can do a business partnership and all kinds of stuff, and things either don't happen at all, or they take forever and a day. So something that you would normally expect to be finished in a week is suddenly taking 6 months or something like that. So is that something that you observed as well out there? I mean, you have more interactions with the real world than I have these days. I'm doing a lot of my stuff online, and other than that, I'm pretty much working from home most of the time. Are we seeing a tendency where people break their promises more often than usual, or is that just me having a pretty depressed viewpoint?
No, I don't think it's you, Frank. I think we are seeing. I witnessed the same thing where people do make promises, and for whatever reason, and they may be very legitimate. I'm not arguing that, but there does seem to be a tendency to not necessarily always stand by commitments. For me, that's something that's quite important. I look at that throughout my profession. If I make a promise, then I will hold by it, even if at the end of the day I'm probably putting myself out. It's not the point. I think maybe it's an age thing. I don't know, but certainly throughout my career, I've always been fortunate to be around people who, if they said they were going to do something, they generally did it. But maybe it's the pressure of modern day society. I don't know. But more and more, I am seeing, I won't say broken promises, because that's probably being unkind, but maybe commitments made, not met. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Maybe one of the things is that you don't want to disappoint the other side by clearly saying no, sorry, I don't have time or whatever. But actually, what I find is the disappointment is rather bigger than being made a promise or a commitment, or whatever you want to call it, and then not following through. Yeah, basically, well, one of these unwords of 2023 is probably ghosting. Yeah, so I didn't really want to exaggerate here, but some of those things that I've experienced are basically going in that direction. That somebody said, yeah, okay, we're doing it next week, and then you follow up the next week and nothing happens, and then you follow up again the following 3 weeks and still nothing happens for months. And rather, me personally, I much rather have somebody said, well, look, circumstances have changed, I don't have time, or call me again in 3 months, and then situation will have cleared, something like that. Pretty much along the line of what we did today. Yeah. So you said you are happy to do an interview while you're still in Malaysia. Then we agreed on a time. Then you had a change of schedule, and then we rescheduled, and that's okay. And if today wouldn't have worked, then we would have rescheduled for tomorrow or Thursday, whatever. But just talking, just keeping the communication open, and having the communication in an honest, straightforward way, that your communication partner actually knows what's going on, and can develop an understanding on what your situation is, or something like that. Yeah, and
I think. Yeah.
No,
Sorry,
that's
Frank,
fine.
I didn't mean to cut across there, but I think you're absolutely right. I mean, people, if you can't do something, then the right thing to do is say no, or no, but. And if it comes with a but, follow up on the but. Don't just disappear, and because it's not. I call it unprofessional, but more than that, it's just impolite, and business is actually, and whether it's business, whether it's whatever, it's all about relationships, and if you make a promise, then stand by it, because that's your word should be your name should be as good as your word. So if you say you're going to do something, do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this thing of it's at the end of the day, it's your reputation on the line. Do you want to have a reputation that you stand to your word,
Absolutely.
you are reliable, you follow up on the things that you commit to, or do you want to have a reputation that you don't, that you promise something, you commit to something, and then you don't follow through? And then the next question would be, I don't really think you can split those perceptions with people, like saying, well, I always keep the commitments to my wife, but I only keep my commitments, I don't know, 30% of the time in a professional setting. I don't really think that works. Yeah, more often than not, this is really being a pattern where once you start being unreliable with your commitments, this is normally across the board. Yeah, and maybe less often with your direct manager than, or with your spouse maybe, than with some random people that you got to know on LinkedIn. That's fair enough, but still, I think that's a general tendency where people either have a value to stick to what they said, or they have a pattern that goes in the other direction, and that will probably backfire because it will tarnish the reputation in places where they really don't want to have it tarnished.
It's interesting, Frank, because and you know my passion for railways anyway, but I always hold the railway industry as being how do I put it, at the top of the pyramid when it comes to being professional. We've got a lot of institutions that make up our professional industry, and I like to think that we are. It sounds awful, but I was going to say better than the rest, and I don't mean that in a nasty way. What I mean is we recognise that what we do pays a lot of input into the public requirements and safety and all of those good things, and I think it comes with being part of the railway to actually honour your commitments. That's how we deliver railways and make them safe and continue to operate and make them safe. And if you can suddenly separate, I'm a professional railway person, but promises that I make outside of that don't really deliver on something, then that doesn't matter. Well, it does matter actually, because it's a reflection on you, and for me, it's a reflection on the industry.
Yeah, correct. I see it very similar as you. I have high regard for the rail industry, and normally over many years, I was fortunate to work with many very good people who, including yourself, obviously, who stuck to their promises, who walked the talk, as they say. So that's why I'm so concerned about this recent trend that I can see, where I think if even people in the railway industry are showing this kind of behavior, which they didn't in previous years, then what about the rest of the society that may have a generally lower bar of professionalism? I'm really concerned about that. But I mean, I don't want to have the entire conversations around that. One of the main things I wanted to follow up with you, and it is a follow-up because you've been a previous guest on the podcast here in episode 16, and now we're down to 47 or 48 or something like that, so quite a while ago. You keep doing very interesting posts on LinkedIn recently for quite a while now, which to me seem quite well thought through, quite elaborate. So it's not your typical, I don't know, 2 or 3 sentences and that's it, but really something that I thought you must have sat down, you must have sorted your thoughts and really write down almost like a small essay about certain things. The last one was about risk management, coming from a specific example that you had while being in the UK, going to a more general statement on risk management approaches in the rail industry, and I thought I'm not sure how many people actually on LinkedIn are seeing those posts, but I thought this podcast might be a good way to disseminate your ideas a little bit further, because I think they are worth disseminating a bit further.
Okay. No, and I appreciate. I'm glad you read them, by the way, Frank. So thank you for that. Um, yeah, look, there is some thought that goes into those, and it's, you know, I won't pretend that I just sit down and I knock them out straight away, because I don't. But the thought, the content, or the message that I'm trying to get across, it's something that I see in my everyday life, and I think, you know, that's something that needs teasing out a little bit further and sharing. And really, it's aimed at, there's two things really. One is to be thought provoking, to try and say, here is something that I've witnessed. Um, these are some views that I've got. How do you, as my fellow colleagues in the industry, and I go beyond the rail industry, but clearly now I write about the rail industry. What are your thoughts, and have you thought about this? One of the reasons behind that is, as I get older, and I think I put in one of my posts, I'm over the halfway line of my career, and I think I then added in the last one, some might say I'm even in injury time, but and that's probably true, but as I've progressed, and probably as I'm getting longer in the tooth, more and more, I'm very proud of our industry, and I'm particularly proud of our engineers within our industry, and I think, maybe they don't realise what a wonderful job they do, and two, what a wonderful industry it is, and how lucky we are to be involved in this. So, I mean, the last one was about risk, and you often see, various industries talk about risk, and they would look at the railway industry and look at railway engineers, and I've heard it from particularly, people in project management, in particular, and don't get me wrong, I've got some lovely friends in project management who often accuse railway engineers of being risk adverse, and I actually think that's wrong. I think there's a subtle difference. I think railway engineers are not risk adverse. What they are is risk aware, which means that, they take the time to understand the risks associated with the engineering element that they're dealing with, and at the same time, because we are a much broader family of engineers. So when we talk about engineers in the railway industry, we talk about civil engineers, structural engineers. I'll put systems engineers to capture, all types of systems. But the other thing is the operators as well. And the operators are engineers in their own right, because they're engineering an outcome for a railway. And I think, the difference is that we actually are aware, because we have to be aware of what we do and how it impacts others, and therefore how it impacts the overarching outcome of what we're trying to achieve. And I'm not really sure that a lot of people actually understand, what goes into, the thought process of how railway engineers actually approach things. And it's not about being risk aware. It's about, I think in the example, I actually talked about, one of the things was, and I went to a CIRO, meeting in London, a couple of weeks ago, and that was a fascinating thing. It was given by Great Western Railway, the operator, and they've been looking at, the fact that in their network, they've got a very diverse network. An example being, they've got high-speed trains, but they've got an awful lot of branch lines, and those branch lines are serviced by diesel trains. And they're aware, in the same manner as we all are, about the need to a carbon footprint and how do we reduce that. And they've been looking at all sorts of ways of dealing with that. And one of the areas that they're now coming up with is to convert those diesel trains to become battery operated. Perfect sense, absolutely perfect sense. And they've clearly done a lot of homework, because I sat and I listened and I asked questions, and you know that they've worked out the range before they need to be recharged, the time that it takes to recharge, all of those things they'd really worked out and thoroughly. And the only thing that was left was their concern was about the fact that to get the recharge, they wouldn't be relying on the HV supply that we normally expect when we do 25 kV or the DC traction systems, where we look at the bulk supply and how we get N+1 or N+2 sometimes reliability. They were saying, well, we've got to get it at the lower end, so we're getting it from the supplier, you know, the low voltage supply. How can we make, you know, how can we do that? Because we may not be able to do that. And my angle looking at that was, actually, I don't think that's a problem. The biggest problem is, I think you can get it, but how do you make sure that it's also got the RAM requirements serviced, such that if failure occurs, how do you deal with that? And that's the angle of coming from a railway engineering perspective, as opposed to normal engineering, where you go, you know, I've got the voltage, it's been supplied to my house or wherever. And you know what? Most of the time, it's okay. But we think about, yes, but what if it fails? If it fails, what's the fallback? And I think, and that's where I'm coming from. We're not risk adverse, we're risk aware. And then we make sure that we put in place a suitable solution that deals with that. And in that respect, when it comes to railways and railways grasping innovation, I think we're actually, if you look at the railways of today, innovation, we are really grabbing it. The only difference is that when we grab it, we actually think about the risks that come with it and ensure that the innovation that we introduce is done in such a way that it addresses the reliability, the availability, the maintainability, and most importantly, the safety of a railway. And that for me is the big difference. And so, you know, I get on my high horse sometimes and go, no, we're not risk adverse. We're very risk aware, and we are extremely wanting to grasp innovation, but apply it in the right manner.
Yeah, the people calling the rail industry risk averse normally probably relate to a certain lack of innovation, or maybe innovation cycles which are much slower than in other industries. But maybe the reason for that is exactly that risk awareness that you just mentioned. That you can't just haphazardly introducing some new stuff that you've read about in the last PC magazine or something like that, because you need to make sure that it fulfills all those requirements regarding reliability, availability, maintainability, and safety. And it needs to be repeatable and all this kind of stuff. And I had a discussion recently with somebody about the usage of COTS hardware for the rail industry, and we came to the point that for a safety case that may be a real issue if you have a piece of hardware which you don't really know how it works and what the internal working is. Because the manufacturer won't tell you, because they will say, well, that's our intellectual property, that's none of your business. But on the other side, you have problems from a rail safety perspective to build a safety case when you're relying on hardware where even you as the provider of the signaling system don't understand how it works. That's a bit of a problem. So you need to have this risk awareness that may often be interpreted, maybe falsely, but understandably, as risk aversion.
Yeah, and it is a shame, and I guess it's the subtle difference, I guess, of engineers who have been brought through the railway industry, and therefore their approach is one of, no, we love to grasp innovation, but we have to know how it works, and we have to understand how it can be applied in an appropriate manner that delivers absolutely safety, but at the same time, the performance of a railway that is expected of us, and therefore, it takes time. It just takes time, and as I said, it's not a matter of, because we over time we've learned that you can't just, let's suck it and see, let's try it out and see how it goes. That isn't how railways work. There are lives at stake. When we do things, there are lives at stake.
I mean, looking at this risk topic from a different angle, I would sometimes almost wish that some people on railway projects would be a little bit more risk aware. Maybe not so much from a technical engineering viewpoint, which is obviously what you were referring to, but I'm looking at this more from a project management viewpoint, from a project scheduling viewpoint, from a project estimation viewpoint. Another tendency that I've seen recently, not just in Australia, but on a almost global scale, definitely in many other countries, including the UK, is that projects get in trouble regarding budget overruns, and I'm not talking like 10% or so. I'm talking, I don't know, anything between 50 and 200%. So real blowouts, significantly delays, which is basically a schedule overrun, and in both cases you're wondering that with a risk management approach applied to those aspects of project management, to budgeting and scheduling, that should be avoidable. And one effect that I'm seeing that's extremely worrying for the industry is that I believe that the sponsors of those projects, the people actually putting the finance on the table, i.e. the governments, the politicians, they want to have investments that make them look good. And what makes them look good are projects that are on time,
Yep.
on schedule, that deliver the benefits that they have promised that they deliver. And once the confidence of those politicians in those projects gets shaken, that can have very, very ugly consequences, to the points that projects are cut short. For example, what we've just seen in the UK with the abandonment of some parts of the scope of the HS2 high-speed project. We've seen projects in Australia being stopped. I mean, a project that you have worked on for a long time, Sydney Metro, City and Southwest, is being critiqued for budget overruns, for schedule overruns. And maybe we just stick with this one, not so much because any of us would have any interest to poo-poo on Sydney Metro projects, but simply because both of us arguably know that project best. The Sydney Metro, when they did the Northwest project, the very first line, had the reputation of being almost anal on schedule adherence and also on budget adherence. And I think they actually completed that project, Sydney Metro Northwest, under budget and pretty much on schedule. I mean, they promised in 2015, I think, 14 or 15, that they would get this thing up and running in the first half of 2019. And I talked to people looking at the Sydney Trains network at the time with regards to upgrades to the Chatswood area and the North Shore line and so on. And I heard comments like, well, the metro project will probably be late. And I said, you shouldn't be betting on that. Yeah, so if they said, from my experience, if they say they go online in early 2019, that's going to happen exactly like that, and it did. So now it's all the more surprising or worrying that the next metro project, which is City and Southwest, all of a sudden gets these problems with overruns of budget and schedule and so on. So very, very long lead up to the actual question. Why do you think that is? Is this another trend, and what can be done to counteract that?
Now that's an interesting one, because I've got as you well know, I have a passionate love for City and Southwest, and as a project, I think, when it's delivered, and it will be delivered, the benefits that it will bring, not just on the city section, which will go live in 2024, which is pretty much on budget. It's on schedule for the city section, but also when they deliver on the Southwest section, the conversion of that Bankstown line from a GOA 1 railway to a GOA 4 railway, I think the benefits that it will bring, I'm going to put aside costs and program for now, and I will come back onto it, but the benefits that it will reap, I think, are tremendous, if you know what I mean. And I think that there will be some lessons that can be learned from that, and when those lessons are learned, those lessons shouldn't be a pillaring, if you like, of individuals, because that's not, you don't learn lessons that way. But there are some things that were really, really good, and there were things that perhaps we know could and should have done differently. But the benefit of that project, I hope that isn't lost in future projects, if that makes sense. I hope we don't lose sight of the fact that there are, the opportunities for similar GOA 1 to GOA 4 conversions, and everything that comes with a turn up and go railway, are not lost simply because we know it's had some budgetary stroke program issues. Now, if we come back to that, all right, come back to the program and the budgets and the issues as such, it's not quite that simple. I think I've got a huge amount of praise for the engineering that went into it. And I don't mean me, because I was involved in it. I mean, I had, there are engineers that are involved today who I've got the utmost respect for. They know who they are, and I don't need to name names because it's not fair, but I have got the hugest respect for them. The issue of City and Southwest, which I don't think is really, really understood, is the complexity of the interfaces and the integration that was required over and above that went into Northwest. Northwest was I'm not belittling in saying it was a simple project, but it was a typical greenfield metro project. Yes, it was the first in Australia, but there was nothing particularly special that hadn't been done elsewhere in the world before. I think when we got City and Southwest on board, the first thing that needs to be remembered is that this wasn't another project. This was a project that had to augment into an existing Northwest that was operational. And in doing that, the first things that we had to recognize was there had to be some changes on Northwest to accommodate City and Southwest, not least of which in terms of how it impacted the OCC, more importantly, how it impacted the BOCC, the operations of the BOCC, and the management of the stations in terms of when you put the two networks together, it made it a lot more complex. So that was the first thing, and maybe there wasn't, that came out after probably some of the budget had been put together, for want of a better word. Yeah. So there were things there to learn from. But the other thing was there were issues on Northwest that only came about because of us doing City and Southwest that we then realised needed addressing. And the only people that could address it obviously was then City and Southwest. And again, I won't go into the details of what they were, but now the City and Southwest wasn't just delivering City and Southwest. It was addressing some of the issues that were still remaining to be resolved on Northwest, but the Northwest was operating perfectly. And that particularly came to being the case when you start to think about Southwest and the fact that on the Southwest corridor, you've got a 100-year-old railway that you are trying to then augment into what is effectively 2 bits of greenfield railway, and it needs to perform to the same level of performance, meet the same KPIs as if it was a brand new railway. And that in itself brought lots and lots of challenges. Because at the end of the day, and I'm going to talk positively for Sydney Metro on this one, a lot of people go, well, you should have renewed the track, you should renew the OHW, you should renew the structures, renew everything, straighten the platforms and all of that. And yes, you could do all of that. The cost would be even higher. But worse than that, you're actually throwing away assets that's got some good level of life left in them. And therefore, if you're going to start thinking more about the environmental impact that we have on things, then it's wrong to throw away and renew assets that's probably got 2 or 3 decades, if you like, of life left in it. You've got wire that had probably still got a good 10 to 15 years left in it. Why renew it when you actually can demonstrate that it performs? And so it was that level of engineering that was required. And that's why you're seeing slightly different on Southwest to the city section is the level of complexity, the level of engineering. And that's why I say hats off to the engineers there, because they grasp that. And so when we talk about City and Southwest, I always look at the positives of the lessons that's been learned from that and how you can apply that for future projects rather than, all right, so it has cost more and maybe, there are other reasons behind it. Yes, by all means, understand them so we don't do that again. But don't, I think it's really unfair for City and Southwest on that particular project. I can't talk about other projects because some projects absolutely, there are other reasons why they shouldn't have blown out, but they did. But I think there are some good, sound learning lessons rather than failures.
So if I look at this from the outside and listening to what you just said, and regarding City and Southwest, I consider myself as an outsider. I worked for 5 years or so on the Northwest project, and the work that I did for you on City and Southwest was rather a short intermezzo, so I wouldn't really count that as significant project experience. But so looking at it from the outside, it seems you're saying that there were things that were underestimated for City Southwest because they didn't occur in that shape or form on Northwest. But at the same time, you seem to be optimistic that people will learn lessons from that so that future projects, similar projects, may be able to avoid such underestimation of problems, that they maybe have a clearer view what it means to convert a piece of legacy corridor. I mean, that's not on the card anyway at the moment, at least not that I'm aware. But still, I mean, obviously, the more challenges you experience and you get to know about in the context of building a Sydney Metro network, the better you should be prepared to take those into consideration next time you're doing something. Like you've got a list of red flags, and which of those may you encounter in the next project you want to create a budget for or create a project schedule for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why I very much said, Frank, I always look at Southwest with a set of positive eyes, not a set of, negative eyes. But maybe it's because I lived and breathed it for a long time myself. But equally so, did a lot of other engineers who are still living and breathing it, and they will come out of the other side some really fantastically knowledgeable railway engineers who can take that knowledge, but importantly share that knowledge. And I think that's something that Sydney Metro needs to do, is share that information, because there will be opportunities to actually do further types of southwest conversions, because I think, don't lose sight of it. Now, there are huge benefits from having a metro style GOA4 railway as opposed to our standard GOA1 suburban type railway. There are huge benefits for the public to enjoy. But I think, don't underestimate the complexity involved with it. But from all of that, there are ways in which you can you can actually truly say, I can come at it from an environmental perspective. So I can look to see, how do I minimize my footprint, carbon footprint in doing this project? So how do I assess what the life of an asset is, and so there's some wonderful work being done on Sydney Metro in that respect. So they know that they can really teach others how to go about that, how you can actually demonstrate the RAM figures, if you like, of existing assets, to demonstrate that they will perform exactly as if they were renewed, because they weren't designed to the same standards, they weren't constructed to the same standards, but the important thing is, are they fit for the purpose intended? And that work, and a lot of work's gone into that, was done by those very good engineers that are there today, and they will deliver on that. And then there's the other things like corridor protection, and how does that get dealt with? And they had to do that because it's an at-grade railway. Northwest and City section didn't have those issues. They're either above ground or they're underground. Either way, they're segregated. This is an at-grade railway. And worse still, it's an at-grade railway with a next-door neighbour in ARTC that you've equally got to protect against. And so all of that is huge amount of engineering that went into that. A lot of market research went into that. A lot of development went into that, so that we get the right specifications. And my concern is, again, looking positive, take that work and then build on it and share it with the rest of the world, because don't underestimate it. There's some tremendous amount of work's gone into there. And the other thing, so for instance, on City and on the South, on the Northwest, you look at your pantograph and your interaction with either the bar or the OHW. It's all it's all greenfield, so they all set it all to certain height and staggers. You go to the Southwest, completely different heights and staggers, completely different. And again, that got to be made to work, and the engineering has gone into that to address that. So it's all of those things that people go, yeah, well, it blew out, or why is it now being delivered maybe 1 year later than it was? There are reasons for that, but at the end of the day, there are real benefits to be learned from those reasons. So I'm very much a glass half full and a real defender of the Southwest Corridor, because I believe in those engineers. And I actually, what I will say is, do you know what? Hats off to Sydney Metro anyway for actually having the ability to, and I won't say take the risk, it's not, be aware of the risk and then say, do you know what, I am going to make this work. Because the easy way would have been just renew everything, and then everybody would have had a real good complaint about the cost of stuff. They've managed that extremely well. Hats off to Sydney Metro, and hats off to the engineers and the people on that Southwest section, and indeed the whole of the city.
Always good talking to you, a voice of reason with an optimistic outlook. That's why I'm like talking to you so much, and I hope that wasn't the last time on the podcast. I'm aware of your time. You need to head to another customer meeting, even though it's late in the evening already. You will be back in Australia in time for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Any specific items on your shopping list?
No, nothing really. I'm not allowed to do shopping anyway. So I, I,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not trusted to go shopping, Frank.
Yeah,
So
cost
that's the
conscious wife
boss's
is
prerogative.
always. I mean, mine wants to talk me into a new generation of iPhone, but the old one is still perfectly working, even though it's a bit of an older generation. So I'm really hesitant to come up with a new tool where I need to get used to all those buttons and so on. But what is interesting is that this year I'm the first time on the provider side for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. So I bundled some of my existing products for training and also including the CBTC World Summit and came up with some special offers for Black Friday and Cyber Monday, because at the end of the day, I'm an online business, a cyber business as well, if you like. And I'm basically wanted to see what your take on this is, to basically apply the concepts of Black Friday, Cyber Monday on the training and conference business.
That's interesting. I think it's certainly interesting to I think apply it and start to talk about it. Sure. I wouldn't pretend to be an expert in those fields, to be quite honest. So I stick to my railways.
Yeah, but I mean, and when it comes to marketing and business development, it seems that people come back to you as the go-to person anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, Frank, one thing I do get excited about is new technology. I absolutely do. And so, I mean, it's what we talked about earlier on. You know, I absolutely embrace evolution of technology and how it can be applied in the railways. And I'm always a glass half full when it comes to that, to say, yeah, I'm sure we can apply it, but it comes back to appropriately. And so, you know, if you look at some of the things that's going on now in the world of, and as an example, I talked about corridor protection and detection of intrusion into the corridor in the southwest. As a byproduct of that, you know, you can start. You've got some other additions like. You can look at asset condition monitoring, because you can start to see movement of actual your track. You can see squats in the track. You can see broken rails and all of those things, which then take to the next step, which is, if we can do that, then we can collect so much more information. If we collect that information, how can we apply that such that we can then start to look at, as we've always talked about in the railway industry, is about maintenance based on asset condition as opposed to scheduled maintenance and things like that, and the benefits that come from that. And all of that is about evolution. So it's accepting it, but how do we apply it? And how do we then do it in such a way that it brings benefits to the operational railway, whilst not introducing areas of reduction in reliability, availability, maintainability, and safety. And I know I'm a bit of a broken record on that one, but you know what I mean. It's innovation is wonderful in the railway, but just got to get it right.
Perfect final words, Steve. Thanks very much for your time. Have a safe trip back, and it would be a pleasure to continue this conversation about some of your other posts again in the near future. And I'm pretty sure you will probably deliver new ammunition over the next couple of weeks. No pressure. And for all the listeners, as usual, if you liked it, then please tell a friend about it, or two or three. And if you want to subscribe, that would make me very happy. And especially this episode with Steve, it would make Steve very happy as well if you took this as a trigger for subscribing.
Can I just wrap up with one thing, Frank? I'd just like to say to all of the engineers that's listening to this, you know, be really proud of what you do, because, you know, railway engineers, in my mind, are just a step above every other form of engineering. You're damn good at what you do. Be proud of what you do, and be proud of the industry that you're in. So that's the message I'd like to leave.
I would want to add that you should heed this message seriously, because it comes from somebody who knows what he's talking about. So thanks very much again, Steve. And to all the listeners, until next time, keep it simple and bye for now.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi, it's Doc Frank again. And before you head off, after I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Steve Allday, I wanted to give you the promised information about the second big offer for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. It's the first time that I'm doing these offers, and I'm really, really excited because I'm providing you with a lot of value if you are interested in your education on CBTC, communications-based train control. This second offer for Black Friday and Cyber Monday is a complete package for CBTC education and top-notch insights. What is included? My flagship CBTC Kickstarter training, the online version that you can watch on demand from anywhere in the world. Don't have to be in Australia or anywhere near. You can be in a completely different time zone, and it's not a problem. It's the arguably most comprehensive CBTC training on the planet. In addition to that, you get a certification process, an official certification and interview with me one-on-one after the training that gives you a formal certification of your knowledge that you gained during the CBTC Kickstarter training. You will also get the official recording of the CBTC World Summit Conference 2023, which provides you with global insights from 18 international speakers from 13 different countries. It's the most global CBTC conference ever held, and all the participants and speakers were unison in saying it's the best conference about CBTC that was ever created. So that's part of the package as well. And you also get a bonus training about high capacity signaling, which explains what high capacity signaling is and how to get there, how it can be achieved with CBTC, how it can be achieved with special variants of ETCS, the European Train Control System as well, and how CBTC and ETCS need to be applied for achieving high capacity signaling. So all those 4 building blocks, if you would buy them on my website one by one, the total price would be 2,200 Australian dollars, but you get it for a one-off payment of only 990. That's a discount of about 60%, way over 50% anyway. It's the best offer that I ever gave out, probably that I ever will give out in the future. And this offer ends on Cyber Monday, the 27th of November. It's the perfect opportunity for you to boost your CBTC education and become the envy of your colleagues and co-workers and the admiration of your managers. So please use this opportunity that will be gone on Cyber Monday. You find it on my training portal, docfranktraining.podia.com. I repeat this because it's so important for you. It's docfranktraining.podia.com. The Black Friday offers are right on top of the page, so very easy for you to find. I hope that you grab this offer, and I see you in the training course. Until next time, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Please share it with a friend. Keep it simple, and bye for now.